Jamaica Alternative Dispute Resolution Society's Justice Corner, where neutrality and hard arguments converge. My name is Rojan Allen, and I will be your host for this show. We have with us none other than Nicola Satchell. She's such a phenomenal woman, making waves in her industry, and we're going to hear more about what she does and what she brings to the table for the Jamaican people. Welcome to the show, Nicola. How are you feeling today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
What exactly are you studying? Are you doing your PhD, your master's?
Yes, PhD in sociology, my love. Yeah.
Awesome. How's that going?
It's going well so far. Diving into field work. And there I'm interested in incarceration. Well, actually decarceration.
Oh.
So how we can use more community sentencing, that kind of thing. So
this is perfect.
And guess what? It's so interesting because there's so much discussion since the pandemic in other countries, of course. We have not been talking a lot about depopulation, but around the world, there's a lot of discussion about how we depopulate and actually get more people outside, although it's not less surveillance because in the community, there's so much surveillance, but
true.
People are not locked away.
Yeah. So how far you've gone into that study, or have you come up with programs that will be able to alter that mindset, or how have you?
So I am just starting. I did some of the IDB. So we did a major prison study. Well, persons deprived of their liberty. Because, we have correctional facilities and not prisons in Jamaica, right?
I know that.
So I can send you the link for it.
Overcrowded, let's not even downplay that right now.
Oh, we can't. Although the minister, who is correct, keeps saying that it's one institution that is overpopulated, but that one institution has like 40% of the population, so that is where the issue arises.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, it's just amazing that you're even venturing off into something like that, because we don't really understand, and we take it for granted that the prisons, the correctional facilities in Jamaica are really just not doing justice in the rehabilitation process for our citizens. I mean, just speaking offhand, as a student that's just starting, how would you combat that issue of prison overcrowding?
Well, for me, because I'm interested in decarceration, the persons who don't have to be there should not be there. And in our study with the IDB, we found that there were persons on remand for an average of 2 years. So that's persons going through the adjudication process.
Yes.
Years. So that is a major problem. So what we're doing now in terms of alternative dispute resolution is to try to get people out of that system, especially those for less serious offenses, that they are not in the institution.
Right.
So I think that is a major thing. We did the decriminalization of marijuana, which many of our young men who were receiving criminal records for small amounts of small quantities of marijuana. So we did solve that. So just looking through on the possibilities for those who do not need to be there, that they ought not to be there.
And that's commendable for even yourself. You're a young person, and for you to even accomplish. Of course, well, come on, girl.
Now you're teasing me. Now you're teasing me.
You're fairly young.
You're teasing me, and I'm laughing. I'm not being serious.
What I'm saying, you are the principal investigator for the Equal Rights and Justice for All project, which ended in 2020, right? I believe, in 2020,
Yeah,
which
but we're
was
still
a
in the
lot.
ending process. And I just
Okay.
wanted to clarify. So I was the initial principal investigator.
Got you.
When I left, Dr. Shanique Walters took over, and we have an excellent project manager in Mr. Kush Lewis. So Dr. Walters was unavailable, and
Mhm.
I read through, I did not know about your organization, and I read
Yes.
about it, and I was like, this is something that we would want to participate in. So I got
Awesome.
their permission to do this interview.
Awesome. Awesome. So, could you tell us more about what the project entails?
So we were interested in how we could actually apply more ADR, uh, mediation specifically, and restorative justice to expand the access to justice in Jamaica. So that is how we initially started.
Yeah.
Uh, I was working in the community. The project team came off a project that we were working with JSAFE and being in the community. And we
Yeah.
really wanted to see how we could enhance that protective environment for family and community.
Right.
We were just in those state of emergencies and the zone of special operations, and
Yeah.
so much crime control was taking place. And
Mhm.
so we wanted to see how we could expand the policy orientation towards more social justice. Although
Mm.
you know that the zone of special operation, that particular legislation also speaks about human rights,
Yes.
and is an interesting mix of crime control with
Mhm.
social policy. We know that persons have been saying that the social policy is slow in coming, but we see
Mhm.
more and more that there is that particular component being introduced. So that is what we were interested in, and especially those children who are coming in contact with the law. Uh,
Right.
saw so many public cases, how it is that we can expand the access to justice there. And the child diversion policy was just about
Yes.
to be released. So we wanted to do the kind of background research, like a baseline for
Mm.
that, and to uh, present policy options to,
Mm.
yeah, to enhance that environment.
So something as fundamental as this project is in, providing for the communities and Jamaica overall. Why is it being discontinued?
Well, it's not discontinued. It ended in its current
Oh,
manifestation. Uh,
okay.
we are constantly seeking partnerships,
Mhm.
seeking how we can partner with organizations to help with training,
Mhm.
and to have that cross fertilization. You know, sometimes it's just
Yeah.
harmonization, like you're in your silos, we're in our silos, and sometimes it's just having that communication. So, yeah, so we are constantly working with organizations. We just work with a group of mediators, mediators of Jamaica, to see how we could help. So we're constantly seeking how we can assist. We under the program we had a great partnership with ROC, the Women's Resource and Outreach Center,
Yes. Yes.
and they do a lot of work with women, especially those uh, victims of domestic violence. So
Mhm.
how you can educate people to access justice, to understand their rights. So
Mhm.
those partnerships we really hold dear to us,
Mhm.
and hope that we will continue to work, funded or unfunded,
Right,
with
right.
some of these initiatives moving forward.
So you're speaking a lot about human rights. What in your mind is the correlation between respecting human rights and freedoms and the need for the greater use of ADR facilities?
And for me, the quest for justice in whatever form
Okay.
is an attempt to preserve
Yeah.
that human rights, that human dignity.
Yes.
Uh, what I love about ADR is that the victim is involved. And when we were designing this program, we actually said to the EU that we want a victimology approach.
Yes.
Because we tend a lot to look at the offender, and we want punishment, and justice means that the person is locked away for a long period of time and all of that. But we were really interested in the victim and that person's human right that was violated by whatever harm it was, and how they can be a part of the process and feel like they're a part of the process. So we saw, for example, where there were more non-custodial sentences being offered, for example, right? This woman with the St. Thomas beating, I don't know if you remember that. And she got anger management and more, and people were like, yes, but it's a soft approach. And we thought that it was important because the community's voice was essential in what happened there, where people were saying, but she's a good mother. Maybe something happened that triggered it. But on the face of it, we're still seeing that machete and the little girl. We're not seeing, what happened, mom, what would be the best for mother and child in that situation. So that is how we're seeing human rights. We're seeing it's important that we educate. So we worked with a lot of schools, and the part of the project that I really loved was that we worked with children with disabilities. So those schools, to kind of give them the tools, because sometimes when we're doing this, we forget about persons with disability. So just giving them the tools, just letting them understand that their voices are important and they have rights, and these human rights should be protected. And there are these mechanisms, even though they might be slow in our country, but there are these mechanisms to access justice. And we believe if we have these effective peace centers that we're proposing, then these mechanisms will be advanced.
So really, you believe that ADR facilities are more the voice for the voiceless and the powerless. It's the voice for every single person. So we're able to then understand on the ground level how we work best with each other, interpersonal skills, how we develop and hone the craft of understanding each other, so that we'll be able to then have conflict resolution at its best. And I really
want to put that, yes, exactly. And especially because we have been saying that we have this problem with violence against women and children. And this is happening, it's peculiar because it's happening in the home, it's happening in the community. And we have these mechanisms that we can de-escalate. If there's something happening and we know that there's this access, so something happens, whether it's family land issues, whether it's some issues with the man and the woman, with the child, if there are these mechanisms in the schools, in the churches, they know about it, then of course we'll have better communication and less violence, and that is what we really ultimately want.
Let's touch more on the policies that you were referring to. We have now ratified with the Singapore Convention on Mediation. What are your thoughts on our local level legislative moves to have a mediation or mediative act fully shaped in our country?
So one of the things that we did under this project was a legislative review. And of course, the Arbitration Act spoke to this capacity for local and international dispute resolution. The Singapore Convention actually gives us that mechanism to have better cross-border mediation. So I know that our Minister of Justice is excited about this and the possibilities, and he believes that this will actually help improve our doing business scores internationally, because we will have these mechanisms. But this wasn't central to our work because we were more at the community level. But we see the value in this, in strengthening or arbitrary legislation for the policy for arbitration.
Right. And earlier you were speaking of the perception of ADR as a societal point of view, that it's a get off easy approach. Do you believe that this undermines the right of the victim to redress?
So I want to step back a bit. So we did a baseline study.
Right.
In that study, we actually found that people were willing to use our alternative dispute resolution. So yes, we tend to have this orientation.
That's in Jamaica.
Yes, historically, the laptop studies and so forth have been showing that we tend to have this punitive orientation.
Right.
But people said they were, if you had the option, then we would be willing for certain, of course. So that for me was important. So it shows that Jamaicans are more open to alternative dispute resolution. So yes, so that for me is important. The second part of the question, which I'm forgetting now, they're the right. The important part of the ADR is that the victim is at the center.
Yes.
And the victim is not just the person, the individual or individuals who are in this direct harm, but also the community.
Yes.
When something happens at the community level, like I was watching the Gleaner yesterday, just on Instagram, watching these videos, and I saw this crab farmer, and I was like, this is so innovative. I didn't know that we could have a crab farm in Jamaica.
Yeah.
And then the next day, literally, his pen was emptied, right? So when you think about something like Pretty Last Me, right? It's not only that farmer, but it's the other farmers. Their mindset is how much investment they decide. So if it is that we can have the victims involved, if it is that we have the community involved, and we can have the kind of redress that will not only impact those directly affected, but a larger community, I think then that will be of great benefit to our society. You know, the multiplier effect from that would be just great for peace, security, for us to reach those Vision 2030 of a secure and just Jamaica, right? Which is that we want. So I don't think it undermines, I think it empowers.
Right. So let's go back to the project itself. It would have provided the opportunity to many disenfranchised in Jamaica and like the victims of GBV with the facilities to experience ADR. However, is there anything being done on a national level to financially support those whose cases would be more appropriate to be handled by an ADR practitioner?
Yeah.
And also to add to that, in any event, what more can be done to better subsidize the process?
So one of the things that we did was an evaluation of the restorative justice centers as they were following the IDB, actually, of course, that project, the Citizen Security and Justice Program ending. And we found that many of the centers were under-resourced, but had so much capacity. We had trained many persons in dispute resolution, and there were these institutions set up, established in the community, but just not enough
Yeah.
Don't not.
Yeah.
So that was one of our recommendation that we really need to, as we try to roll out these peace centers at the parish level, to think about what are the funding lines that
Yeah.
are appropriate.
Mhm.
So the persons, the into the restorative justice, um, those persons trained
Yes.
were given a stipend, for example. Uh,
Okay.
and this was important in keeping the program running.
Mhm.
Persons also were traveling great distances because these centers tend to be in town centers.
That's
Uh,
true.
so all of these things to just think about those issues, because when we think about these centers, when you think about access, we tend to have these in, and I know it makes sense in city centers and all of that,
I'm
but
just about
we
to
have to
say,
think
yeah.
about those rural,
That's
those persons in rural areas that are unable to get to these centers effectively. So
right.
those are some of the things that we really pointed out, that there needs to be better those centers need to be better resourced. And there was just really a lot on the center managers who were doing an amazing job with the little that they had. And they were going out, they were trying to get cases. But we
Yeah.
thought if it is that they were better resourced and they could actually build those community relations with the churches, with the schools, with different community-based organizations, then the access would be increased. So those are some of the recommendations that we made, and that is what we would like to see. We would like to see those centers being better resourced, and that people could, if it is that they are having trouble to access, if they're coming from these rural areas, then maybe we could do like a subsidy just to get them to the centers, whatever processes they're going through, whether restorative justice or mediation.
Right, right. So how often did you guys do those evaluations?
So we did, so it was just a snapshot.
Mhm.
So yes, um, so we just did that one
Okay.
evaluation. Hopefully, we'll be able to have the resources to repeat these process. As we said, we had the base, like this was like a baseline. This is where we're at
Right,
when
right,
we're thinking about that expansion, when we had the child diversion policy, what
right.
attitude and the knowledge at this particular point. And so at some point, we would love to do this again.
Right. And we would love that as well. So, what is your vision for the use of ADR in the country of Jamaica as a sense of assessing justice?
So for me, I would love to see a greater take up uh, by the magistrates
Yes.
and the community in ADR. For me, we have started this whole process, the restorative justice process, for example, to reduce the backlogs in the courts. It's
Hmm.
all for the preventative opportunities that it offers. So
Yes.
before there is something that escalates into violence or something that we have to treat with in the courts, if we could have those kind of mediation services before, where there is that intervention, especially with family and community violence, I think that that will help to reduce the body counts that we've been seeing,
Yes.
just the kind of violence that we've been seeing, especially against women and children. So for me, that is important. And it's also important that we educate those in the schools, because we tend to have this zero tolerance approach, and there's a lot of suspension, there's a lot of harsh punishment at that level. But if
Yes.
we can change the orientation have students sitting in a circle discussing what is happening, in their lives, then we can build neutrality, build trust,
Yes.
try to rebuild that, community that Jamaicans before us spoke about.
Yes.
Instead of everything just being like sticks and stones and guns.
Yes.
So that is really important for me. So not just the reducing the backlog in cases, which is important, but also to be used as some preventative tool.
And right. So why has it taken us this long to have this well needed conversation? What caused this? I don't want to say backward mentality, but what caused us to take the approach of alternative dispute resolution being alternative?
I, that is interesting because when I just completed my first degree, I worked with an organization called the Kingston Restoration Company, and there I met Donna Parchment Brown,
Yeah.
and she was talking about this fabulous thing, and I was just so excited. They started this whole peace centers to try. There has been, so the conversation is not really new.
Well, when I say no, I mean there's more force behind the conversation
And
now,
there's
as
more
opposed to back then, right?
there's more force, and I think it was stimulated by this reducing the backlog of cases. But the reality, and of course, now that we have the child diversion policy that speaks to these alternative dispute resolution, but I think there's also more public education, public knowledge. So a lot of what the CSJP did was to actually have these kind of public forums, and that is what we tried to do with this program. Being at the schools, we had competition during COVID. I was just so fascinated. If you look at the Gleaner, you see these competitions that we were having. We were giving students tablets so that
Yes.
they send around these videos on alternative disputes. So they had these cute little skits that they
Yes.
came up with. Yeah, so there's more public awareness,
Yeah.
more conversation, and we are happy that our project could have assisted with, being a part of that conversation.
Okay, awesome. So if you had to choose, what would you say is the single most important benefit of ADR within the Jamaican context?
So, as I said before, just strengthening that capacity for early intervention, where we have the community being empowered to resolve disputes before hospitalization, before there are these issues that we're seeing in our society now, where we can really promote a healthy family environment. One of the things that I really liked with our project too is that we had the opportunity to work with a group of elderly persons that we tend to neglect, because they are facing violence in the home too. And we tend to neglect that because, once it is that you get to a certain age, your voice, or you don't feel like your voice is as important. And so in some cases we have seen where there are these elder abuse. So to work with that population too, to say you are important. You might be retired, you might not have an income, but you are important. And these are also mechanisms to help you, right? And so those things for me are important. Just building this, strengthening the family and strengthening community so that we can really see the violence there being reduced.
So, having worked with the political ombudswoman, um, the Honorable Political Ombudswoman Donna Parchment Brown, and being an advocate yourself, working with the ERJ, what do you have to say to the Jamaican people and the Jamaican government?
Well, I would just love to use this platform to say that we are a society of strong, beautiful people, that there is so much in us that we can have amicable dispute resolution. We do not have to utilize violence. And for me, to the Jamaican government, it is important to think about how we can effectively build and resource these peace centers that we've been thinking about, and we have some models to see how best we can advance alternative dispute resolution in our country. We can do it.
Yes.
So one of the things I love about Jamaica is that once we get onto something that we think is important, then you see investors from all over coming in and playing their part. So we can play our part in advancing the welfare of not just our nation, but the whole human race as we
Well
can.
said, well said. I love that.
So, yes, let justice and truth be ours forever, So, yeah, I love Jamaica and I want to see us just being better
We all do.
and more disputes.
We all do. So thank you again for being a part of the Jamaica ADR Society's Justice Corner, where neutrality and hard arguments converge. It was a pleasure having this conversation with you. It was well needed. It was an eye opener, and we hope that we'll be able to have this discussion with you again in the near future when we see progression taking place in Jamaican society.
And
Thank
all
you.
the best with your project. I was reading through and I was like, this is a group of young people just doing great things. Okay.